That first command, I knew I was going to be in for life. And with that mentality, you give every last drop you have, everything you have, you leave it all out there. I was in 10 years at the time when they had the fall. I fell about 30 feet off a mountain. October 2019, I received a epidural in the spine to kind of mitigate and combat the pain. And immediately, when the needle was ejected, I sprung up with excruciating pain, and I could not feel my legs.
This whole journey took us through 4 different hospitals in 2 different states. Because we were living out of state, we just exhausted all our funds, and we actually had gotten an eviction notice when we were in Green Bay.
The fact that I couldn't feel my legs, the possibility of me never walking again, those thoughts race through your head. Who's going to take care of my family while I'm in here? And I know there's going to be a lot of traveling, so another form of fear that wasn't quite physical.
I think as a grown adult with a husband that's a chief in the U.S. Navy, it's so hard to ask for help, especially financial help.
That fear, subsided when I knew that Salute was there.
Every time I see somebody from Salute, I'm so happy because I know they are there for me.
When I was facing retirement, again, that fear.
Now that time has come unexpectedly, I'm so grateful for Salute because they have so many corporate partners and they have reached out to me, and I have so many options to find out who I am, what difference I want to make in the world.
I've been in for a while, and I've seen things around the world, and not all of them are great, and that perception of humanity is kind of out the window.
We would literally be homeless if it wasn't for the generosity of the donors.
And Salute has fully restored my faith in humanity.
Alrighty, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And now the stars of the show, the ultimate service upon services for the software as a service system. They used to be out here in the community with us. Now they were absorbed in the right place, actually. My friendly friends, David Warner and Hugo Bernier. Can you guys say hi? Because we're in podcast mode. Just saying hi because we're saving video bandwidth to the world.
Hi,
hello, everybody.
I hear Dave. That was Dave.
And hi, this is Hugo.
There's Hugo. That's really great. So let's see. Maybe we can share something over here. Somebody's doing a share. Oh, there's Dave. Okay, so everyone knows. We had some bets. It's like, is Dave going to be wearing something today, or Hugo going to be wearing something? Well, you know what though? Dave's got helmets, and anything new, by the way, you have in there is this is very famous for his collection in the back. Is there anything new in that collection, or is that pretty much what you had for the last year? I don't know.
No, there's the Powerful Things. That's a little new. So any Stranger Things fans, there's a little play on words there. Working on an all-up Power Platform helmet. I don't have enough room for every product, so we're going to condense it into one helmet here soon.
Oh wow! Okay. You've just said something that's going to need a whole new session just for that alone. But we're going to hold our peace right now, and let's see. Maybe we can put up Hugo over there. Yeah, Hugo. Oh, you are in your island special lair location. I can tell. Clearly, right. you have mastered the grow vegetation beyond the size to take over the world situation.
That's right. Yeah, I've got a poppy behind me, so yeah.
It's a very famous thing, actually. Well, I'm not going to go there right now, but let's see if somebody has a screen share. Let's go ahead. We're going to go ahead and go with the conversation with the presentation for today. That way, the folks that are, like you say, in a bit of a rush, they can get going, but otherwise they can stick around and hear the banter. And there it is, very lovely. And I take it away, gentlemen. I can't wait to see this presentation because I'm me, and I just can't wait.
Awesome. Thanks, Ralph. All right, everybody. Well, Power Platform development is a team sport. That's what we're going to talk about today. My name is David Warner. I'm a community success manager at Microsoft, and with me is
Hugo Bernier. I'm also a community success manager at Microsoft.
Excellent. Thank you, Hugo. Today, we're going to talk to you about how we're going to work together using the Power Platform. Now, every player can't be good at everything. We're talking to Chicago. This is a big sports town. You got the Blackhawks, you got the Bulls, you got the Cubs, you got the Bears, and everybody attending from around the world. We know that there's a lot of big sports fans. We understand the key to a successful team is ensuring that every player in the team brings a unique value that complements the team. You'll notice everything's being brought back to team here. It's about working together. No individual is greater than the team. And so we want to make sure that that's understood. We're going to talk about how the Power Platform and really also the community is going to be your team today. We can't get started, though, without saying a salute to our partners and providers and those sponsors for events like this. We know it's virtual, but there are still costs involved. So we want to say thank you to every single one of them. Maybe go visit them on their website, send them a little email, a little tweet, DM, something that lets them know that you appreciate them and what it is that they're providing to these community events. So let's start talking about team members, the values that they bring. You need to understand everyone's strength. And as we mentioned, the key to a successful team is to ensure that every player on the team brings their unique value and then complements the team in that way. So we have a picture here of a football team. Likely we're all familiar with football, American football. We were just talking about the helmets behind me. Football is one of the best examples of a team sport. You could have a Hall of Fame quarterback, Hall of Fame wide receiver, all around, but if they do not work together, if the offensive line, which often goes unthanked, for example, is not working together, that Hall of Fame quarterback can't throw those passes to that Hall of Fame wide receiver. And if the offensive lineman decided that they wanted to throw the ball, it's not their strength. And so you can see where the team may begin to crumble at times. And so really what it is how does this correlate to citizen development? Well, I'm going to turn it over to Hugo Bernier, who's going to talk a little bit more about that.
Excellent. Thank you, David. So let me start with a little story. And then here I'm going to use a little board like the coach likes to use. And, not
clicking for you?
Well, let's see if we can make it click. There you go. All right. We got this going. Is this live, David?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay.
Let me back up. There you go.
All right. Okay. All right. We'll see if we can make this happen. So I once worked with a lady where I was doing the requirements for this new project, and this lady she had been working with this product for 11 years. And she was so excited that we were coming in to help do the new version of the software that she was going to use on a daily basis to do her job. Right. So when we started doing the requirements, she was so excited. And she's like, okay, so I'd love to be able to search for anything, any topic, any subject at any time. I'm like, yeah, sure, we can do that. Right. And then she said, okay, well, what I'd also like to do is I'd like to be able to, David, I think I'll need you to fast forward for me. Does not seem to work for me. There you go. All right. So I also, when I search, I need to be able to control the headings and the fields that I want to show in my search results. Like, yeah, sure, we can do that, no problem. And then she says next, well, I also need to be able to take those search results and export them to an Excel spreadsheet, and I need to do that regularly. And I was like, yeah, sure, we can do that. That's not a problem. And then she says, okay, and when I export the Excel spreadsheet, so next, basically, when I export the spreadsheet, I want to be able to actually have the margin on the right. I want it to be really, really, really big. And I was a bit puzzled here. I was like, well, why is that? Why do you need a wide margin? And she said, well, because when I export the margin or the report, I'll print it. The numbers are always wrong. So I'm going to add up the numbers in the report, and then I'm going to write them manually into the right margin in the right column, and then I'll recreate a report from that, and I'll import the report, and that's the report I'm going to show to the executives. So I was like, okay, so let me get this straight. Like, your requirements or your goals really are to have an accurate report. And she's like, yeah, that would be amazing. Can we do that? And of course we could do that, right? But no, this lady's been using this system for 11 years. And she's been doing exactly what she described for the last 11 years. Because the system didn't meet her needs. And it caused her to pretty much like do several days a week to do this manual labor that potentially introduce even more errors, but she's been doing that for 11 years. Now imagine if she had been able to make the changes herself to the system, because she knew her business. She knew the business better than anybody else in the organization. She knew what needed to be done. She just didn't know how to ask for it. And that's really where the Fusion team model comes in. So on the next slide, we're going to talk about the App Gap Challenge. And so there is a huge demand, a growing demand for applications. And unfortunately, we don't have enough developer, right? So the stats that I have here, and those are stats you've probably seen, but 500 million new applications will be built in the next 5 years. So if you think about it, that's more than all the apps that were built in the last 40 years. We've got 5 times more faster demand for mobile applications than IT departments can deliver. And 86% of organizations struggle to find technical talent to build applications. So on the right here, you'll notice that we have this shortage and the supply and demand. So the number of developers versus, by 2030, the number of developers we'll need. And the gap here is about 4 million that we're going to need to be able to meet the challenge. So how do we do that? How do we continue to innovate and empower people to do the digital transformation that everyone wants to do if we don't have enough resources? And this is where, on the next slide, we have new strategies. David.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hugo. So think about it, folks. Strategies to prepare for challenging times. Now, there are a number of strategies that we can talk about, but there's also a number of challenging times that we really just need to take a moment to reflect on. You're going to look to give new citizen developers opportunities to do amazing things within an organization. Now, this is going to increase the impact written by pro developers. But let's also take a moment and think about some of the challenges that aren't not necessarily just technical within your organization. Let's take a moment and think about how our current macroeconomic climate kind of forces us to do more with less. Now, I don't know about you. When someone says you need to do more with less, I kind of feel like it's a little bit of an oxymoron, right? Like when someone says they want some jumbo shrimp or something's pretty ugly. They just don't seem to add up together to me. Doing more with less feels like it's impossible, really. Like I need to come up with a flux capacitor to make that happen, or I got to go back in time to do more with less. It seems really hard to implement and somewhat stressful, but in our current macroeconomic climate, what are we saying? We're seeing a lot of layoffs. We're seeing a lot of jobs affected. We're seeing budgets tightening. We're seeing teams shrinking. And those are most definitely above and beyond any of the technical aspects of our jobs. Those are challenging times. So how can you do more with less? Well, we're going to talk more about how you're going to be able to use the community to do that. The community is going to provide you a way to do more with less because there are samples. There are passionate people out there that want to collaborate with you and provide support. When your team is shrinking or your budget is shrinking and you still need to get business done, that's when you do need to do more with less. And that's where the community can come in. And we're going to talk about some opportunities for you to do that. But for the next few slides, we're going to talk about how you can scale with Fusion teams. So for that, let's hand it back over to Hugo Bernier.
Awesome. Thank you, David. So we have kind of the usual suspects, right? We got the citizen developers, the pro developers, and the IT professionals. So the citizen developers, what they do is they really work because they're the ones that understand their business. They participate directly in the development to shorten the cycles. Again, remember that lady that worked in the same product for 11 years? Imagine if she had had the opportunity to bring up this idea she had 11 years ago, or 10 years and 52 weeks ago, because 1 week after you're starting to use the product, she realized that there was issues. Now, what the coders do, the pro devs, right? They do the hard parts. They do things like data integration. They do custom user experience controls and things like that. Now, the pro developers work with source control and they manage the app lifecycle. And then they work with the IT professionals, where IT grants resources to the more advanced developers. Meanwhile, the citizen developers, they register the applications and they participate in testing, and they let IT govern the citizen activity and help nurture the community, right? So that's how we're going to be able to make the best of citizen developers, pro developers, and IT professionals working together without creating, what people like to call shadow IT. But we've been talking about fusion development. What is really fusion development? Well, fusion development is really when the professional developers and the low-code developers get together to build applications faster, reduce overall the backlog of things, and remember how we have a huge backlog coming up and we have less and less resources to do so. So that's closing the app gap challenge that we have. We also want to create developers from non-developer roles, because unfortunately, that's what we're going to have to do to be able to keep up. But we also want to make sure that it's easier to innovate. And so we want to create this innovation ecosystem. And we want to collaborate together to concur basically the challenge we have out there. And so the organizations that have been embracing fusion developments, they've found that they're getting over 80% in savings in development of applications. So on the next slide, we're going to talk about when to use fusion development. The one thing, and we tend to do this at Microsoft, right? We'll talk about Power Platform, and we'll say anybody can build an app using Power Platform. Well, it's not necessarily that everybody can build an app, but everybody has the opportunity to contribute to building an app. And so here, when we're talking about fusion development and how the Power Platform helps, fusion teams work together, it doesn't mean that it's always going to work for every single person. So what apps are best suited to become fusion app? Well, the one where, running a business involves multiple critical lines of business. Applications and processes together, right? So we've got a whole bunch of things that are happening together, and then we don't have enough software developers to build the company IP, and the lines of business apps are all the same at the same time, right? The other thing too is that when we need to empower the non-developers to build line of business applications, they're the only ones really that understand their business. Right? They're the ones that, again, instead of doing the translating thing and throwing things over the wall and hoping that we got things right from the IT department, to really work closely with the people who understand their business. And so fusion development really is the answer to modernizing the lines of business applications and to take advantage of the potential, what the Microsoft Cloud has to offer. And that includes things like Azure, Power Platform, and even Microsoft Teams. So on the next slide, we talk about the pillars of fusion development. And so you'll see here that one of the things that we're showing, even though David and I come from the Power Platform community and the Dynamics 365 community, we also have a heavy involvement in the Microsoft 365 community. And so when we're talking about the Power Platform here, we need to understand that it doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? First of all, one of the things that you should look at if you want to embrace fusion development is think about an API first approach strategy. So build, host, and expose all your APIs in a secure and governed way, right? So that's using things like Azure, SQL, SAP, whatever you have, and they may be existing legacy technologies that you have, and then build an API integration layer. So that's something that your pro developers can do. And we'll talk a little bit later about why you would want to use this approach. And then the next kind of pillar is your low code, no code strategy. So use developer tools like Visual Studio Code and GitHub to collaborate with a team of people, maybe building Power BI, Power Apps, Power Pages, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agent applications in the way that makes sense. And you might be saying, well, why wouldn't I just build the application without using the Power Platform from scratch? It'll be faster. And you know what? It's true. It might be faster for you to. I know, like I like to use React and SharePoint Framework, for example. And I have a tendency to say, it's going to be faster for me to just build a new web part or something, a new Viva adaptive card extension that will do this for me a lot faster. But what happens when my business needs change? When my customers' business needs change? When we need to adapt to a new pandemic, right? And we completely need to change how our business is working. That's when using the Power Platform comes in handy, because we're able to adapt quickly. We're able to change the business rules. And even if I was able to do it fast myself as a developer, as a pro developer, when's the next time that I'm going to be available, to work on this tool? And then this is where using things like Dynamics and Teams on next pillar is to collaborate when we're building these tools. And you're going to see, if you're looking at the trends that are coming up in the Power Platform, you're starting to see more and more this multiplayer interface, right? Where people can work together to build new applications. They can work on the same screens together, and they can work on the same records together. And that's, again, because we're trying to enable this new capability. All right, so on the next slide, kind of repeating the same thing here, but one of the things that we're trying to understand, because when we start talking about using citizen development and empowering, low-code platforms like the Power Platform, some people might say, well, is the professional developer going away? Is the professional developer useless now? No, it's not at all. The professional developers are able to do so much more, right? Because think about, for those of you who are professional developers in the audience, you probably had to deal with the silly, employee sign-off form that has to be done every year, right? And every year, the business comes to you and it's like they forgot every year they needed to do this, and it needs to be done in 2 weeks from now, right? You need to drop everything because we now need to do this form. Now imagine if what you were able to do was to say, I'm going to build the APIs that you need, or the infrastructure that you need to be able to host that form. And Mr. or Mrs. Business, or citizen developer, you can build the form yourself and just call my APIs to store the data. So as a pro developer, you have the opportunity to amplify your skills, to create the building blocks, right, that will help people build the applications they need, and to really liberate the data through APIs. And this liberating data through APIs is huge. I've worked with a lot of major retailers in Canada where, and if you think about it, as a retailer, the most important piece of data you probably have is the products that you sell. Imagine if we were able to actually give everyone in the organization that needs to have access to this data the ability to connect to the data about the products that we sell in a secure way, and make sure that nobody's ever going to mess up with that data. Nobody's ever going to, what's the word I'm looking for? Make the data bad. That's not the word I'm looking for, but and we can do that by creating APIs. So we're truly liberating the data through APIs, compared to today what we have a tendency to do, where a lot of the retailers I've worked with, they started with, I just export about 75 copies of my database to about 75 CSVs that are updated once a day, right? And then our users are like, well, my data is out of date. There's wrong data here. There's duplicates in my data and things like that. And so again, the beauty of creating this collaboration It's to liberate the data through APIs. And then enhancing user experience through custom controls. Imagine if, as a developer, I can build code components or PCF controls to create beautiful branding, and beautiful user experience. That is really where I can add the value as a professional developer. And I just give it to my citizen developers, where we're giving this no-cliff experience, right? There's no drop-off here. The citizen developers can just take the business experience they have and accelerate the business-led applications and create these applications. All right, on the next slide. We kind of have the same idea here, but I'm digging a little bit deeper here, where we have in our Fusion development, we have Power Apps and we have Power Pages, right? My new favorite product that allows you to create websites, and I can create for multiple types of clients, mobile clients or web clients. I can create applications that will call the UI and logic behind the scene. It could be, business rules, it could be applications, and I could use Power Automate to create flows. And then I can connect to my data either in Dataverse or through connectors. And then outside of the low code platform, we've got access to things like SQL Server and Office 365 and SharePoint and Salesforce and Twitter and SAP and all that stuff. Now, one thing that we should remember is that Dataverse allows you to create virtual tables as well. And virtual tables means that you can take your legacy data that might be not necessarily stored in Dataverse, but make it a first-class citizen inside of your Dataverse environment. And so the cool thing about that is if you want to connect to it with, let's say, Power Pages and make that data securely, share that data securely to the outside world in an authenticated way, you can do that with Power Pages with websites. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. So now we've talked about kind of creating components and creating APIs, but one of the things that we should remember is that the Power Platform has a lot of connectors already, but maybe these connectors don't do what you want them to do. Maybe you want to build a connector to a custom API that you built internally. And this is where things like Power Automate and Power Apps can actually connect to your custom APIs and allow you to consume your own custom functionality. And so one of the cool ways to do this is you can use Azure API Management to do this. So you can actually create your APIs using, your custom web API, your REST APIs. You can use, what is it called, Swagger or OpenAPI to actually expose the functionality, or you can even create Azure functions. And then through Azure API Management, you can actually expose those custom connectors to let your citizen developers consume those APIs and do the cool functionality. All right, so next slide, please. If we have talked about Azure API Management, you may not be aware of what Azure API Management is, but Azure API Management really allows you to have an API gateway, right? It allows you to create endpoints that accept those API calls, but also create routes, right, to the backend. And you can do that in a secure way, right? You can enforce inbound traffic rules, and you can transform on the fly and create policies really to protect your infrastructure internally. You also have the built-in management plane that allows you to kind of set up your APIs and import the schemas and set up the gateway policies and manage the users who are able to call these APIs. And if you're exposing your APIs to the outside world, you can also do things like creating limitations, right? Rate limitations, or how you can only call this API so many times, and then after that you'll be throttled. And then there's the developer portal, which is the main interface for your pro developers to create these APIs and list the APIs and even create the documentation so that people can actually use these APIs without, again, even if they've never used your APIs, they can start consuming them right away. All right, and our next slide, please. David, what's next?
Well, let's talk about it, Hugo. Thank you. So as we talked about, it's a no cliff experience, right? So it's time to take that leap, that Fusion team leap. How can you get started? Well, the first step is to find a team. So you want to put together a team. As we mentioned, this is a team sport. We want to work together. So you want to find a domain owner, information owner, right? A pro dev, low code developer. Choose a new application based on a business need. Now, of course, you could do this in a collaborative way to learn. So you could choose something like, I don't know, just a personal interest that you might have. And that's a good way to kind of learn together. Find people that have common personal interests, build an app around it. Adds a little less stress to it. You feel a little bit more empowered to make mistakes. So don't think that everything has to be based on a true business need with an organization. There's been lots of opportunities where passion and personal interest have built a business need, and oftentimes it's a good way to kind of build that pedigree within your organization and understanding and sharpen your axe. You want to build the APIs that are needed if there's no APIs available yet. Now, some may say that control that data. Well, hold on. I don't want to just give anybody and everybody access to my data. That's troublesome. That's dangerous. That's where building these APIs come in. So if you don't have an API, talk about building one. Because when you think about saying, I don't want them to have access to the data, I'm going to warn them when they try to access it that they can't. Right? When I started out my career a long time ago in Union Bank of California, a little young developer, eager to write code, I remember writing code. I worked with a guy who gave nicknames to everybody. And for all you people that are of common age, you may remember the movie The Net with Sandra Bullock, and there was a guy in there called Cyberbob. This was Cyberbob in our organization. And I was writing code one day, and he said, what are you working on? I said, well, I'm working on some error trapping. And when they make a mistake, I let them know the mistake they made. And he said, don't remind them when they make a mistake, prevent them from making the mistake, right? So when you think about data access and you're worried about people accessing the data and doing something wrong with it, that's where the API comes invaluable. That's where you can leverage the discussion around building an API. Don't prevent people from, or don't remind them if they make a mistake, or just don't cut them off completely. Build interfaces that prevent them from making mistakes and then still empower them to do more. So that's where you want to expose that API through an API gateway, create your API portal. Of course, that's where the power of the Power Platform starts coming in. You can export your API as a Power Platform connector. There's lots of opportunities to do that, lots of celebration of that. And then you can build your app with Power Apps or Power Pages or whatever particular product makes the most sense. So that's kind of the next step. But you may say, I got no clue how to start that. I have no idea how to do some of that. There's a lot of information. This information that you all are giving us from Microsoft, I feel like I'm running a relay race. And I've often compared it to that. You feel like you're in a lane running by yourself, maybe within your organization or a small team, and next to you are all these product lanes with multiple people, Power Apps running with 10 different runners and automate 10 different runners, and you're trying to keep up with the understanding of all this data and all this knowledge and all this information that's constantly being new information and new features, which is great, but hard to keep up with. Name changes, which we all know about. Frustrating. How do you keep up? Well, you want to stay in shape. How can you stay in shape? Again, this is where you can do more with less. Consider the community calls. They're like a team workout. We're learning together, we're supporting each other, we're keeping everybody pumped up. We're getting updates from product groups, demos from community members. And you may say, well, what value is that, right? Seeing what someone else is doing, it exposes how the products can be used. It gives you an understanding of where maybe you're working with an organization that has a tunnel vision to how that product should be used. Now you're able to see how the rest of the world, the sun never sets on the community, I say, because we're a global community. So everywhere around the world has different needs and business needs. And that's an opportunity to learn how they're using the technology for their business needs. Now, some of these community calls are only speakers from Microsoft. Only speakers from Microsoft, which means that you're getting it directly from the horse's mouth, which is fantastic because now you're plugged in directly, and they're not like, a brick wall. You are able to join these calls. You're able to chat in these calls, communicate with the other team or with the other community members and community friends and ask them questions. And again, it's a team sport, right? We're working out together. We're keeping our minds fresh and sharp, and so that's important. Now, there's a community that backs that, right, within the Power Platform. and that is the power users community. So almost 800,000 members, almost 500 user groups, 92,000 solutions, 137,000 discussions. So if ever there was something that's being talked about, the Power Platform is one of those, right? So you can learn more at powerusers.microsoft.com. Tons of opportunity here for the Power Platform. Don't hesitate to go sign up. We would love to see you there. Now, what are some other things that you're going to find? We talked about doing more with less. We've got a Hall of Fame. What's that you say? The Sample Hall of Fame. We have a collection of Power Platform and M365 samples, again, because there is a better together model. Oftentimes it's said Microsoft ships their org chart. People tend to think that the only thing in the world is Power Apps, or the only thing in the world is Power Pages or Automate or SharePoint or whatever. But the truth is that everybody in the world that uses these uses them together. And that's really how they're used together. But we have a Hall of Fame of samples that you can utilize to learn, to jumpstart a project. Many have said samples is the first place I go before I start my task. And best of all, my boss thinks I'm a genius, right? We want you to take credit for these because it's an opportunity for you to accelerate your learning, accelerate your project, collaborate with others. There are opportunities here for you to be able to take some of these samples that are out there and add on to them. Give more features to them. It's a great way to learn. As we mentioned, you download them, you analyze them, see how someone else has done them, and then maybe you add on to them. And then there is an opportunity for you to contribute back, which we'll talk about more in a moment. But there is plenty of samples, and all these are free, and they're also vetted, right? So it's not like you're going to download something that's all of a sudden going to start Bitcoin mining in the middle of the night for you. None of that is happening. We centralize all these within Microsoft owned and managed repos along with community members like MVPs to ensure that things are vetted and taken care of properly. But these are again tools. These are ways that you're going to do more with less. And again, it's hard to see how that phrase can actually work, but these are living examples of that.
Hey, David.
Now, yes.
You said these are stored in repositories or repos. You're talking about GitHub here, right? Yes,
I am, in fact. Yeah, and GitHub, have you heard of GitHub, Hugo? I know it's kind of hard sometimes. Have you? Yeah, as if we rehearse this. It's kind of like, it could be confusing. Right now, GitHub is a storage mechanism online in the cloud, and it can be a little intimidating. It uses, phrases like fork and raw and blame and pull request, which sound extremely foreign to almost anyone that speaks any language, really. And it can be confusing on trying to understand not only how to utilize some of these samples, but also how to contribute back. We mentioned that these are open source. They're open to the community. They're by the community for the community, which means that, as I said, you can contribute back. You can download one of these components, make it better, and provide it back into these sample galleries for the rest of the world to take advantage of. But you may say, me no speaky GitHub. How do I do that? Well, the personal coach that's part of the community is sharing is caring. Now, many of you have likely been part of these sessions. We invite you to be part of them if you've not. These are live, hands-on, never recorded, safe space. What does all that mean? It means that we set up live sessions to collaborate with you, show you how to create your first pull request, perhaps. You might need to know how to utilize some of the samples, maybe some extensions like CLIs that might be beneficial for you. The key is that they're live and they're not recorded. So we all know that oftentimes when we're new to something, you're going to have questions, but then you start second guessing your questions. I know I have. Should I be asking this? Does everybody know this? Am I going to look dumb if I ask this question or sound stupid? And this is being recorded. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to sit back and maybe find it on, the web. But these are opportunities for you to collaborate with MVPs, members of Microsoft, the community, other like-minded, passionate folks just like yourself. And they're regularly scheduled. We're scheduling more. We're starting to do some recordings of them. They're absolutely free. There's no cost, and they're there for you to take advantage of. We try to schedule them in different times of the day, because we are a global community. So we understand that there are times that are better for some in the community. It's not all Microsoft Standard Time coming out of Redmond. So we want to make sure that we are empathetic with the time zones of the rest of our community members and friends around the world. But they're great opportunities to do that. So don't hesitate to take advantage of them. There are more scheduling soon. We're coming up with new sessions. As I said, we're doing some on-demand recordings so that you could always watch those, join a session with some questions. And we want to ensure that you're empowered to be able to do more. And as you do this, you learn. It's not just for purposes of being able to say, hey, I'm learning how to do this one thing, but I'm also making some friends here. And you may say, well, what is the benefit? Like, what is the career path? I really would like to know. Of course, I could learn one or two things, but is there a greater story involved here? Well, we are just tickled pink to be able to say that we have had some folks that have never done a pull request in their life. They joined a sharing is caring session. They did a pull request, they submitted a sample, and then they unleashed their inner passion. And they've made hundreds since then. Some have also made a contribution, in which case we then asked them to present on a community call. Some of those community calls are open for you to present on. And so they had never presented. We offer something called the buddy system. So if you are interested in presenting on one of those calls from a sample that you contribute, or even if you haven't contributed, it's something that you've created that you want to show off to the community, that's absolutely okay. But you may be a little nervous about having that public speaking happen. You're going to be on a call with hundreds of people and maybe a little nerve-wracking. Totally understandable. And nervousness is a good thing, by the way. It means you care. So don't ever feel like you're doing something wrong if you're nervous about public speaking. But we understand that sometimes it's better to do it with a buddy. It's better to speak with a buddy. And so we've created the buddy system. And what that allows you to do is work with another MVP or member of the team, and we'll craft the presentation with you. As Hugo says, it's kind of like a presentation on rails. We make it very easy. We present it together, we create it together, we demo together, and then at the end of the day, you get all the credit. And that's what it should be about. You're doing all the passion and putting that in. And we've had some amazing contributors in the community that have gone to their very first sharing is caring session. They've done a buddy system, and now they're an MVP. So the trajectory is fantastic. These programs have been created by the community for you in the community to get more involved. And again, team sport. We want you to take advantage.
Hey, can we take a second to give a shout out to Louisa Fries, because she started in the community. She was super active in the community, but she always said, "I'm not a developer. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that." And then we got her to attend a sharing is caring session, and it was like she just discovered new superpowers. Like, we created the monster. It was a good monster, but she discovered that she was actually really good at doing pull requests and samples and blogging and stuff like that. And it was like she discovered her voice, right? And she always had a voice. She was always very active, but she always, had this barrier that she's like, oh no, this is more developer. I'm not going to do this. And now, like, she's super active. In fact, she's involved in the sharing is caring community, as well as the patterns and practices PMP team. And that's just one example of again, if once you get rid of those barriers and you have a personal coach like we have with sharing is caring, you're able to really truly can start contributing and learning a lot of new things. Sorry, David.
Nope, it's almost like we practice that ahead of time. Yeah, exactly. It's just one story. And it's inspiring. And Louisa is a good friend of both of mine, Hugo's. She's a member of our Sharing is Caring team. And again, it all started with just the sharing of information together in a way that is empowering. We don't want you to ever feel like, just here's some docs, read that, you're good to go, because then you'll have questions, you don't know where to ask them. These are opportunities for you to learn together. Now that's great once you've done all that, but how about some recognition? How could we recognize you? Well, we absolutely not only want to recognize you, but celebrate you. And if you're familiar with this, then you're probably smiling right now because you have some of these badges. But the recognition program is the first of its kind in any community that is not for profit. We are powered by Credly. And you may say, what is Credly? It's that same certification company or badge company that gives you the badges when you get Microsoft certified. And so you are able to be recognized in a formal and official way for the hard work that you're doing within the community. Now, what does this mean? Like, I print it out, I put it on the fridge to tell my mom, yeah, that's great. You should do that, by the way. But You're able to share it on Twitter, put it on LinkedIn, attach it to your LinkedIn profile. And some of the success rate of these programs, such as the recognition program, are unparalleled. You see, it's a 98% acceptance rate. That's actually about 30% higher than the Credly average, which is amazing because it shows that the community wants to be recognized. We want to recognize you. And it makes a difference for you because, again, in this macroeconomic stage right now, every little difference you're making that you can show to your manager, to your client, or both. I worked in consulting before I joined Microsoft. I had both. I had to impress my manager and impress my clients, give them a reason to work with me. And they wanted to know, what made you different? Why should I work with you? What are you doing that's different from consultant A, B, or C? How are you making a difference? Well, this is our way of providing you an opportunity to show how you're making a difference. There is no cost. We do have to pay for it, but we cover that cost in the community through a negotiated rate with Credly that we've worked hard, because again, this is the first of its kind. They've never had a community organization that was not built for profit coming to them to say, hey, we want to create a recognition badging program. So it's an opportunity for you to be part of something special. It is no cost. You do need to opt in. We run scripts every month to try to, a couple times a month, to try to identify. And we're having a fun one right now, by the way, the season of getting. Gitting, right? Instead of the season of giving, it's the season of getting. And it's your opportunity to contribute and get recognized with some fun badges, but as well as some official badges that are a little bit more business friendly, if you will, to show the difference you're making. But we should have fun together as well, and that's the importance. So don't hesitate to sign up, aka.ms/M365PNP-recognition. You deserve it, and we want to recognize you.
And if you're planning on going back on the job market, it's definitely for future employers. It's also a bonus, right? To be able to put this in your resume and to say, I personally contributed to, I'm a top contributor in, the Power Platform sample, or contributed to these controls, or these, all these other things that we have available. It certainly makes a difference, right?
Absolutely. And as I mentioned, all these are working together, right? So that team sport, that collaborative opportunity is a great thing. So don't hesitate to take advantage of these. Last call to action here today is join the community. There's something in it for the whole team. Go to aka.ms/join the community. You can see more about the Power Platform community, ways in which you can engage. We've got a lot more that we're working on now together. Hugo and I are all up Power Platform in terms of the product lines for the community success team. And we have so many ideas. Although people think we're the same person, we are not, which gives us the opportunity of thinking twice as much. So we want to thank you all today for attending this session. Don't hesitate to get involved. Don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Hugo in any way. Hugo?
Well, there's a few questions in the chat that we should address. One is, within the organizational context, who is best suited to start the Fusion development team conversation, own the program, and be the champions? So when I used to work as an independent consultant, I used to have to go to organizations that had not been so successful at implementing software. Right? Usually by the time I got there, it was the second or third time that they were trying to implement some software. And usually the top reasons why they were failing was a breakdown in communication, but also trying to bite off too much, right? Like to do everything all at once. And so my trick used to be, I'll go to teams, I'll find teams that are bleeding, that are suffering, like they would do anything to be able to be successful because they're in so much pain, right? I would go to them and I would say, hey, are you interested in trying something new? You've already tried this like 2 or 3 times before, so let's do things a little differently this time. And if you can find, and David spoke to this in one of the slides, but if you can find a team like this where you have someone from the business who, again, they are frustrated because they're not able to get kind of the level of success that they're looking for. And you've got maybe a developer, a pro developer that's able to talk to human beings, which sometimes can be a rarity. And you've got good partners with the IT team. You're able to start with a small Fusion team, and you're able to say, okay, we're gonna kind of change things a little bit. We're going to work together, and we're going to solve this problem. And we're not going to try to solve every problem known to man. We're going to start with solving the most important problem. And we're not going to try to make it perfect. We're going to, because, perfection is the enemy of innovation. We're going to get it done the best that we can, and then we're going to iterate quickly. So instead of disappearing for the next 6 to 9 months or year, we're going to take the next 6 weeks to 8 weeks. We're going to make a change, and then if there's something that comes in like, oh, this is the wrong shade of blue or whatever, what we're going to do is we're not going to delay the project. We're going to go live, and then 2 weeks later we're going to do another iteration and another iteration and another iteration. When you start doing this, it's amazing. The people, first of all, the people that worked with you will be successful, way more successful than they've ever been. But the people who originally told you, bugger off, I don't want to talk to you, I'm too busy, or, sorry, that's not, we don't want to do it this way, we want to do it the way we've always done it, they're going to be the first people that are going to line up to talk to you and to say, can you help us? Can you help us we want to know fair. We want to do what the other guys did, and we want to be successful as well. So hopefully that answers the question here, but look for the people who are the most invested in being successful, and communication is key. So make sure that you are you do have an executive champion who's able to, again, the executive champion that has the most to gain from seeing you succeed, become best friends with that executive champion and make sure that they are part of the conversation. And they will usually help remove barriers and push hard for you.
Yeah, there's another question that's kind of on a similar mindset as that, but it's a little bit more high level. My organization has a lot of people resistant to technology and new things. Do you have any lessons learned from similar situations? So I'll start off. I know Hugo has plenty to offer on that. And there was an answer to it from Craig in the chat, but I'll just address it here too. So 2 points from me. One is that learn about allyship. And allyship, by the way, has nothing to do with technology. It really is something that can be implemented in any organization, any business model for any industry. You want to create allies in your organization, no matter what it is. Allyship is going to be very, very powerful. And that, again, it has nothing to do with technology. It has to do with getting to know the person. Sometimes people are still just people. We are people at heart. We have kids and families and lives and personal interests. And you'd be surprised that when you learn to ally with someone over something as simple as a favorite meal or a favorite destination, the bridge that is gapped and the connection that is made is pretty powerful. And all of a sudden, they're willing to listen to a whole lot more than just about your favorite trip or your favorite food or your secret recipe for ramen or whatever the case may be. But what Craig also said is an important point, which is what's in it for them. You always have to say what's in it for them. The so what? What's in it for me? Is what they're going to ask. So you kind of have to flip the perspective. Instead of saying, well, I can do these things that are going to improve the overall business, you have to consider if they're resistant to technology or resistant to change, they're not seeing what's in it for them. As soon as someone sees what's in it for them, they're invested, because all of a sudden you're going to improve their life, improve their efficiency, make things easier on them, make things cheaper for them, whatever it is that they need to get out of that relationship. If you put that first and foremost, you'll get adoption a whole lot faster.
I can relate a story to that. I worked with an agency that regulates investment banking and mutual funds and things like that. And so they hire retired police officers and federal police officers. And those police officers, they're not necessarily the most technology savvy. They still love their little trusty little notebook that they carry with them, and they write notes. But the one thing they always had to do is they always had to create a report every 3 months. They had to create a report to talk about their case status summary, and they hated doing those reports. So when it came time to get them to use this new technology that we were proposing for them, the one thing that we had to answer is what's in it for them. And so we said, I'll tell you what, if you already write emails and you already write, appointments to talk to your witnesses and your complainants and stuff like that, and you already write notes. So what if I gave you the ability to tag, this email, this phone call is related to this case, and I give you a place to write your notes that is always available to you. And then you will never have to do a case status summary because I will automatically produce it for your boss, right? And in fact, you never have to worry about a 3-month case status summary because your boss can always go check every case that you're working on and get up to date, like to the second of what's going on. Well, guess what? All those grumpy police officers that didn't want to learn anything, there was something that was even more evil for them, right? Which was that case status summary. They were gladly able to or willing to switch over to the new technology because there was definitely something in it for them. So to Craig's point, what's in it for me? That's the first question you need to be able to answer. If you're getting pushback, it's probably because you haven't addressed that first point. David?
Nope, totally agree. First rule of negotiation is consider the other side and what they're going to need to get out of it. And usually if you kind of lead with empathy, which is trying to put yourself in their shoes, you're going to find more success because then they see you trying to care about their needs.
All right, and I think with that,
you got one more question. One more question. And by the way, so Ralph can't let that comment go away when you're with someone else's shoes. Don't forget to wear socks before you do so.
Yeah. And well, the other thing too,
straight up hygiene, my friends.
Before you judge someone, right? Walk a mile in their shoes because then you're a mile away and you've got their shoes.
Hey, and if you can sense their shoes from a mile away, that is an indicator. I think they call it a red flag. But we do have one more question.
Yeah, one more question. What is your recommended approach when users are hungry but management is slow and the biggest bottleneck? That is a great question, actually, and a common one. So I know Hugo's going to have something to add. I'll add 2 things here. Find those within your organization that are also hungry and work together with them on a side project. Now, how can you do this? There is a free developer account and tenant that you get. You may think, well, I need executive adoption to be able to go learn and build some stuff. Well, you don't. If you go get a free developer tenant, you can actually create your own apps and create your own solutions within that tenant together with other like-minded folks in your organization, and maybe start small. And then what you can do is you can take that small solution, if you do use that in alignment with what is an actual business need, right? Maybe your management is slow and the bottleneck, but likely there's going to be 1 or 2 people there that have a need. You could go talk to them and say, hey, is there something you do on a daily basis that just feels so repetitive or feels like it could be improved by a solution or an app? Find out what that is. That gives you that, what's in it for me? So then you go build that. This is the story of citizen developers, right? Career switchers. Go find what that is, build it for them, and all of a sudden they're invested and things and doors start opening.
I'll give you the trick that I learned when I first joined McKinsey and Company. They taught us that when you go talk to any executive, any management, go look at their annual report and look at their strategic objectives, because they will clearly tell you this year we're going to focus on X. And you know that the executives and the managers are all measured on those objectives. So go find those objectives, whether it's an annual report or it's documented somewhere, and then find a way to align your initiative with their objectives. So if it's about, I don't know, improving customer satisfaction or reducing overhead or blah, 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 find a way to directly contribute to their objectives. Because essentially what you're saying is, I'm going to help you get your bonus yacht, right? Your bonus house by doing this. So we're not taking money away from you. We're actually helping you meet your objectives. And trust me, they're always going to be willing to let you help meet their objective, because that's what they're measured on. Hopefully that answers your question.
And with that, folks, we're at the top of the hour. Thank you so much. The tag team, Dave and Hugo, thank you so much for your service and the services that you're working within services. Don't let me get too going. We have to let people go. And so we'll say goodbye. Hugo, say goodbye. David, say goodbye.
Bye. Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Yep. Thank you.
And by the way, Craig was hidden in there and saying stuff too. So thank you, Craig. And we have an applause. Yay.
We got to get the.
We got to get going. Oh, there we go.
Bye.
And we're off. Everybody, see you. Bye-bye.
See you.
See you at the next session.